would it um, would it be okay for you at some stage, Jez, to talk about the core wound and
Yeah. We can talk about
how
anything you want.
um, how that might manifest? So, um, abandonment. Um, is there anything else that um, you could point to which would identify or characterize the core wound?
Every personality is in some ways, an expression, a unique expression of each person's core wound. So, let's sort of remind ourselves what I mean by the wound. So, okay, imagine a baby now before it's identified as being a person, before it has a name. So, in that natural state, there is an instinctive oneness because there isn't even the naming or the idea that things are separate. And so to me, that's like an insight into being and into literally our natural state. This is how we come, and this is the essence of who we are. But at the wound, that connectedness and what an adult might call oneness is broken at some point, and it happens in different ways for everyone, really. Sometimes I think it's one kind of event, but it's the dislocation that happens from that natural state, and it's brought about by in the book I have the baby in the center, and then you've got the parents, then the parents' parents, and then the family, and then the culture and the group personalities in sort of rings going out, and this, not pressure, but this influence comes to bear on this
Yeah.
absolutely untarnished, pure being. And gradually it learns to be as the group personality has learned to be. We need a self, we need a sense of separate self to operate in the world. So that's all natural and necessary and part of the job of the parents and the family and the community, I guess. So that's all good. But as I was saying the other week, the personality is what I would call the full self, which is the self that's been kind of siphoned off and grown according to this wound, to this dislocation, to the pain of losing that. And that's when we start thinking, you can only think if you've lost the knowledge of yourself, or the being of yourself as love, only then could you start thinking or need to think, oh, if I do this, they'll like me more. That's one example of it. So, yeah, so we end up as these personalities, which we are so acclimatized to that we think they're real. And then we think that's who we are. And the wound is is really the start of all that. So everybody's got certain kind of emotional patterns that are so close to the wound, like is where it all began, and then through their lives they're built on, and they're repressed, and then they get stronger. Certain situations will bring them up. It is possible to touch the wound. That's my experience. It's always like time travel. I know that I've been able to almost return to the me, or the sense of me, or whatever it was that was me that was there when it happened,
Right.
because it's stored in the body and the mind, I guess, but very much in the body too. The sounds that came out of me were not the sounds of a 60-year-old guy.
Right.
It's, the sounds of a baby that were emitted.
Right.
And the weird thing is, I'm listening to this because choices awareness is like, wow, at the same time as feeling those feelings. So this is what I mean by choiceless awareness. In the end, you can't really turn it off. Whatever happens, you never stop watching. Really, that's the real point. I
Right.
mean, it doesn't matter in some ways. It's like you don't have to go there. But like I said, there's this, think of it as like a flower and the petals opening. And if it's out of your control, it's nothing to do with you, really. But whatever needs to happen for in that unfolding of you is what will happen. But the common denominator, the important thing always is if you have that yearning, then it will be watched. So the personality could get hold of that and make it into a big dramatic story. It could get off on it and pump itself up with it. And none of that has any use whatsoever. The body holds it all. So the body can be a real way in to these things. It's amazing. Like I said, this was like time travel. I'm not talking about some airy fairy spiritual idea of astral plane or anything. This was just a re-experiencing through the body in a very grounded way. But something in my consciousness was able to be where I was 58 years ago or whatever.
Right.
It's, there's so much wonder and so much unknown in this. And in the end, this is just a position of watching the mystery of it all. And the natural response to that, I find, is wonder, really. So it's not that position of I know everything by any means. It's more the state of unknowing and wonder. But having said that, there are things you can know, and that's what we discuss here. We talk about the bits that you can know, you can describe. It's almost like there's a path that you can describe to. Then you get to the end of the path, and after that gate, then the wonder, then the mystery begins, and you can never go beyond that. Um, And some people seem to think you can, which is just, if anybody thinks they can, they don't know this. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Right. I'm completely with you on that.
Yeah,
Completely.
yeah,
So there's a resistance to, so that wound is, it's here right now.
right.
And so at any time we can either resist it and protect ourselves from it, or we can experience it like you did then. We could all do that right now. So there's that resistance to it. I'm that herd mentality thing really struck a chord for me, because so individually we tend to resist that wound and really being with it. But I think also the herd, which right now, I guess there's 7 of us in this herd, there's a dynamic when you're with a group of people that, like, it's not socially accepted. Like if one of us was to just start crying right now like a baby on this call, I get it would be safe, but or not, I don't know.
We would all perhaps have our own responses, but I don't think there would be any negative judgment on it. I can't imagine that because that's one of the core principles of this. Everything is seen, and whatever's happening is what's happening. So you mentioned, I think, in past weeks that taking the ayahuasca, right? That had opened up some things for you, right?
Yeah, ayahuasca somehow seems to take away those barriers that we
Mm,
that the identity has put in place.
yeah,
They call it facing your shadow, which
yeah,
that's just a way to say what you're saying.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What we're really
Um,
talking about is doing that all the time in everyday life without the need of an external thing to help open up those doors, the doors of perception, as Aldous Huxley called it, I think. Yeah,
yeah,
it's like an
yeah.
ongoing thing, but it's in the marketplace, it's in the family, it's in your everyday life. Yeah. It's not to say that there aren't times when it's necessary and good to pull away from the world. I mean, the thing is, you called it the herd in the book. I call it the group personality. because that's a good way of describing, like, this is the personality writ large, just multiplied into a group formation. And group personalities have their own beliefs. But the group personality of man, which is basically the tenets of personality, which is like personality is there to stop you going in that direction and feeling those feelings and to keep you together and keep you functioning. So this is why what you did there is kind of, you do it away from society, because society doesn't want you to go in that direction. That society doesn't want to know about people breaking down. That's something I found out when it happened to me, that this was one of the big taboos, because personality is about holding things together. And there's this group thing of, when you ask someone, how are you doing? Are you busy? There's this group thing of, oh, if you're busy, I'm busy. Everything's going all right. We're all still together. We're all still functioning. And it's all about maintaining that functioning, because personality is about, like, the wound happened, but we got it together to function. And we can still function. We can keep that at bay. And we can still strive for success and have hope for the future and all of this. So you can see they are very different directions. Touching the void, touching the wound, is something that, you need a lot of safety, and you don't, not that you do it, but it's good to recognize that it's very deep work, as it were, and you need to respect it almost, and be kind to yourself. If you're going in, if for whatever reason you are touching aspects of the wound, or very, very deep feelings that have been buried all your life, you need to be very kind to yourself, because it's very obviously more than tender, but it's the formation of who you are. So it's a very scary thing. It feels very, you're losing control, and yeah,
Vulnerable.
very. It's the most vulnerable you'll be. It's a bit. I think in the book I talk about it like everyone's got their worst nightmare, based on what their particular form of the wound is. And in essence, you can find out what that is. And to me, the ultimate intentional suffering would be that one is aware of what one's wound is, you can sense it. And rather than going in the direction that personality wants you to go in, which is get the fuck out of there as fast as you can, run. It would be to
Yeah.
intentionally stay there and keep those eyes open as long as you can. You may not even be able to do it for long, but that for me is like the ultimate intentional suffering, because there is suffering in it, but there is also the key. If this was where your life went wrong, you could say, inverted commas, is this where it took a massive wrong turning? If this is the point where your being was lost, or at least severely compromised, this holds, it's like it's heaven and hell. It holds your hell, but the other side of it is your heaven. So it's got a tremendous potential for changing your life if one can stay in that intentional suffering and just keep watching. This is definitely a real gift that Gurdjieff brought, the idea of using life like that. I think he's really good on that. And I don't really see much on that out there. He's an amazing guy. I don't think he's, apart from in culty areas, he's not that well known. And I think the reason is that our culture, because of the internet and technology, everything is about press a button and you have it now. And I think that can be expressed in spiritual circles as, yeah, you've already got it, you're already awake. That's the ultimate version of that like everybody wants, it's so easy now. Whereas Gurdjieff's message is not that. It's like you've got to work, you've got to face those things you're running away from. Whereas the message now seems to be, you're already awake, you are that. Just look away from that. You are already that. This is something I can get into. I like the idea of that. There is truth in that message, by the way, as well. There is definitely truth in that. But because, in one sense, that is who we are. It's who we are now. But if there's something blocking that expressing, and who doesn't have any of that, then to look away from that is an escape. Even if you're looking away from it with very spiritually sanctified theories and ideas.
You think it's easier to do alone or to be with other people? I guess it's different for different people.
Well, essentially, the root of this is you're on your own with it, right?
Yeah.
Because it's you at the start of your life. Just you and life.
Right.
That's how it began. But if you have anyone who is, dare I say, evolved enough to know about this and has the compassion and the ability to stay present to it, that can be very, very helpful, because there has to be an environment of support and love, definitely. If there's any idea of somebody being around and they're freaked out by it, well, that's not going to help you, because that will amplify what's in you already. There'll be a part of you thinking, yeah, I've got to get away from this. And if somebody around you that's expressing that for their own reasons of fear of it, then that won't help you. So it's all about who it is. If you have anyone who's big enough to provide that environment, I think that can be very good. I mean, I'm very lucky. I've had my wife around at those times. So it's a very sensitive thing. And when you're actually talking about the wound itself, it's the most sensitive thing ever in your whole life.